Okay, now we're recording.
Now we're recording.
All your funky noises.
My funky noises for a funky man.
How do you do your...
Testing.
It feels so forced.
Woo!
It's very Tobey Maguire of you.
Yeah, just look up. Woo!
Cause we're recording for the Ethereum Pod. Now balloons on the full-time squad. You know that we're recording for the Ethereum Pod. And we no longer hide that we're on. Living in a Ethereum world. Living in a Ethereum world. Living in a Ethereum world. Living in a Ethereum world.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Fifth Period, the film podcast hosted by two media teachers, where this week we are breaking down and piecing back together a super fun-filled film, block by block. My name is Mr. Brown, and with me once again for the full episode today is...
Mr. Boyland.
Nailed it.
The whole thing. So,
I let you say your own name today, so I was wondering how you were going to pronounce it.
I love having a bit of agency. It's fantastic. But no, here for the full podcast again to talk about a movie that, when I came to Film Club, and this was recommended as a suggestion, one that has been recommended a few times. Get the lobster thermidor in the microwave and let's get going.
Now, are we starting to see, I love doing this to you, asking you questions you don't know I'm going to ask you, putting a bit of pressure on you while you're on the podcast.
Always.
Now that you're here for the full episode, back-to-back weeks, are we starting to see a trend? Is this going to become a regular thing?
I think so. I'm
Boyland all the time.
Yeah, as long as the listeners are happy to have me on the pod for a little bit longer, and even if they're not, well, I'm probably going to keep rocking up anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I want you on the pod, and it's never been about the listeners for me. It's always just been a self-indulgent project. So, it certainly makes it easier for me to be able to chat to someone and not pre-plan things that I have to say.
Yep, an organic conversation.
Yeah. I just think it makes it more interesting for people to listen. They don't want to hear me just go through the plot details. It's good to get some opinions, some back and forth, some 100%. Banter, if you will.
Some banter, some Batman banter.
Some Batman banter, that's it.
Yeah.
And now, after a few video eps in a row, we are absolutely exhausted. Those who have watched those video episodes might argue we looked pretty exhausted during them as well.
Particularly as they went on.
Yes, it really is just two episodes of a couple of guys losing their minds in real time.
Really, you can see the moments where the wheels have completely fallen off the Batmobile.
Oh, yes. But it is nice to be back to audio only and take a bit of a break from it. Both of us currently in the supine position, resting and icing our joints.
Yes, so we needed to have a recovery ice bath after the podcast. So we had to holster our lightsabers that were mainly used for, ineffectively I will add, to try...
Really underused. We had them, in my head they were going to be integral to the episode.
But instead we mainly used them to try to turn the lights back on after they automatically turned off. And even then they weren't very effective.
Yeah, so that doesn't necessarily make it into the edit. Us waving them around is there, but the reason why we're doing that was never made clear.
No.
So perhaps I'll include a clip of that in this episode of the podcast so that people could see us.
Yeah, some frustration of us when the lights do go out. It felt like a decision to sort of make it a little bit darker.
Oh, 100%. I don't know why we've lost light.
Just as I said, darker.
Yeah, I know. It's symbolic, but annoying. Annoyingly symbolic.
The next film starts away more towards him.
That's
a total darkness.
They'd already set it up, and so we're so close.
I know.
But I will ask listeners that if you do prefer the video podcast to the audio only podcast, please let us know. As I said, it is a bit more work, but it's worth it if you guys enjoy it. But if this is something that you do primarily listen to instead, then I guess we won't go to the trouble.
Yeah, because there's definitely a fair bit more effort involved, but again, effort that we like putting in, and particularly yourself, Mr. Brown, putting in lots of different little Easter eggs and clips to reference back to, and whether they're specific to that episode of the podcast, or potentially using the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man 2 clip for the 11th time in a podcast.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. We like sort of putting in those little Easter eggs, but yeah, like you said, if you prefer just, popping your AirPods in and just having a bit of a listen, then that's okay too. But yeah, just let us know. Keep the conversation happening.
Absolutely. In addition to chatting the Lego Batman movie today, we'll also be talking our classic segments of Weekly Watches and Tantalising Trailers. So if you want to skip ahead to any of that, I will leave time codes in the description below.
Hi, this is Ahana, and today we're chatting about the Lego Batman movie.
Big thank you to Ahana for doing the intro for today's ep. I remember she actually did a joint intro with Talia last year. It was for the Barbie Princess Charm School episode.
Okay.
An absolute classic one. I'm sure you've caught up on, Mr. Boone.
Absolutely. That was, I'm pretty sure when I, you had the option to go into most popular videos on the channel, that was pretty up the top.
You are saying this in jest, but it actually was a very popular one.
I can imagine.
Had one of the biggest turnouts for Film Club because there was a campaign where Cars 2 was versing Barbie Princess Charm School. And we
An
ended
all-time
up
battle.
Yeah, I know, right? Of all films.
No ka-chow.
No. So we ended up drawing in a bunch of people who had never been to Film Club before just because
That's
they were
awesome.
getting behind the campaign for Barbie. But
Momentous.
yeah, Ahana was integral to that campaign too and wanted to pitch an alternate Scott Pilgrim suggestion, which if it wasn't M, I would have been all for it. It's one of my favorite films, so
Me too.
I always love chatting to Ahana about that. But didn't actually get to chat to Ahana this week because I wasn't even there. You took the reins for recording the student intro.
I did. Initially, we were going to see sort of who had suggested the film and see if they were going to rock up. Zoe wasn't there, and I had to sort of ask the classes, like, hey, I need a voice, I need an intro, and Ahana stepped up to the plate with a great deal of enthusiasm and nailed it all in one take. So Ahana, thank you very much for providing that intro and putting your hand up to do it.
I love to hear that it was only one take. Perhaps Ahana can chat to Sharky about that for future weeks.
What are you talking about, Mr. Brown? It's clean as a whistle.
I can't remember. Does Sharky like Star Wars?
No, he loves Star Wars.
Hey, it's Sharky again. I love Star Wars.
Yeah, you do. Oh, thank you, Ahana. Let us jump into the Lego Batman movie. Now, what platform did you watch this film on?
On Stan.
Me too.
Yep.
But it was listed as Batman Lego film.
I didn't
on
notice
Stan.
that.
Even though in the movie itself, it clearly says the Lego Batman movie.
Yep.
That's the title that comes up for it on
Really?
Stan. And I couldn't make sense of it. It
It's just
was
something-
bizarre.
They've just got into the AI to describe the film, and that's the description they've got.
Entirely possible, but yeah, I was very thrown. I thought perhaps it might be like an alternate cut or something. Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe
It's
like
weird.
an initial DVD release of a Batman Lego situation.
Who knows? For sure.
Exactly.
Alrighty, I really want to kick things off by talking cast.
Oh, just like a couple of big names.
Oh, just a few, just a few.
Just a couple.
There are so many amazing actors and voice actors
Yep.
in this. So one thing too that's becoming more common for voice acting these days, they get established actors into the role, and sometimes they do that at their own peril. They get someone who's well known and people go, oh my God, that person's in it. But they're not a voice actor.
Yep.
Because they're used to using their facial expressions and their gestures to communicate their characters.
Doesn't
they're too
always-
subtle with
yeah.
their voice acting. They're not as energetic and enthused, but they did an incredible job for this film.
Yeah, and then I think, some of the choices, obviously, like Jenny Slate, who's a much more sort of established, obviously has got, some live action credits, but also is like pretty known for doing some really good voices in things like Zootopia, which was released the year before this, and
Big
The
Mouth.
Lorax, Big Mouth as well. So
Yeah.
clearly like someone who's, really comfortable in that space and does, considering Harley Quinn voices are quite a bit of a point of conjecture for like a lot of people.
Yeah.
Depending on who's doing it, whether it's Tara Strong or Arlene Sorkin. I think she did a really good job in the role. But yeah, that's just like one name. I mean, you've got some of them down here.
I'll rattle off a few. We
yeah.
got Will Arnett as Batman, obviously, and the voice. It's just, what a choice. Like, he's not putting anything on. That's just Will Arnett.
Yeah.
And it's so good. Rosario Dawson as Batgirl / Barbara Gordon. Michael Cera.
Perfect casting for Robin.
I think he's my favorite character for sure. Ralph Fiennes as Alfred. And I find this so interesting because...
Who else is a villain in this movie?
Later on, Voldemort crops up. And I was like, I wonder if Ralph Fiennes is also going to voice
Just doing
Voldemort.
double duty.
But no. Eddie Izzard came in to do Voldemort's parts.
Does a very good job too.
And those kinds of like gags about people voicing roles that they've previously done or references to things are littered throughout as well. So we were talking about Zoe Kravitz playing Catwoman for the couple of lines that she says.
And I think either one or one and a half of those are meow.
Yeah. At one point when they're trying to break in, she goes, "You're in, meow, meow."
Yeah.
But we were saying, like, talking back and forth about when this would have been cast versus when would the Batman have been cast.
The Batman,
sorry. And we're not 100% sure, but it actually looks like she may not have been locked into the role when she did this.
So Matt Reeves heard that meow, was like,
perfect.
That's my Catwoman.
That's who I've been looking for. Look, there are so many. Conan O'Brien's in the mix. Obviously, Zach Galifianakis as the Joker.
Yep.
We really liked the fact that Two-Face was being voiced by Billy Dee.
The original Two-Face.
He's so good. I just love all those references. And the film is littered with jokes about Lego, jokes and references to Batman, but also just jokes about film in general. Like, I love that the plane at the beginning is called MacGuffin Airlines. That's just hilarious. The last couple of worth mentioning for voice acting, like Seth Green as King Kong, even though he doesn't really say anything. Jermaine Clement as Sauron.
One of my favorites.
So good. But also Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill reprising their roles, respectively, of Superman and Green Lantern.
It's pretty awesome. Like, just who they're able to get in there. Ellie Kemper as Phyllis as well is like pretty. She's great.
So
I love Ellie
energetic.
Kemper.
She's great. Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
Yes,
so
always.
Good.
So yeah, like it's a stacked voice cast, and it's very clear how much. And you talked about sort of, it's not just big names, but they do a really good job with their voice acting performances. There's a lot of energy, and you can tell that like this was a fun project for these people to be involved in, and that comes across in the whole performance.
Oh, absolutely. And you didn't know that Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill had played these roles before?
No, because I haven't seen the Lego movie.
Yeah. So
because Will Arnett had done it before as well. So, yeah.
Correct. So they don't really make too many references to the Lego movie in this, but there are a couple of gags that are like, so the fact that he refers to a master build. So the whole premise of the Lego movie is around this one guy who doesn't build to the instructions.
Right.
He changes the Lego pieces around, and the people that can do that in the Lego universe are master builders. It's like a specialized skill.
Okay. So a good little reference if you're keeping up with the Lego mythos.
Absolutely. So we kick things off with a black screen.
Yep.
It's so good pairing this with black screen at the front and then the white screen at the end of the film, and just the whole joke about Batman being darkness and brooding. And it's a really, really good way to just establish, we're jumping straight in with the making fun of the Batman franchise.
100%. I think, it does really set the tone for the rest of the movie, and particularly that whole sort of opening sequence. It feels like you've been dropped into like the middle of a Batman cartoon or a movie, any sort of piece of Batman media, sort of establishing, okay, we've got the Joker taking over the MacGuffin Airlines, which is fantastic. And then immediately the fact that the pilots don't find Joker threatening and sort of setting the tone for, I guess, what's the major focus of the film is like poking fun at this relationship between Batman and Joker.
Yes, and making it seem like it's a romantic relationship.
Yeah.
So I think the way they phrase it too, instead of sleeping around, he says he's been fighting around.
Fighting other people.
Yeah, so good. So good. But yeah, that opening scene really tells you this ain't your grandpappy's Batman Lego movie. The speed with which things are happening. And the jokes, they're just coming one after the other.
Yep.
You barely have time to recover before the next one comes in.
And then eventually as well, just as, they're setting up all the different voice actors as the bad guys.
Oh, and you must have loved it when they just rattled off all the villains' names.
Yeah, Condiment King, Killer Moth, Kite Man, Cat Man, like everyone who's a man, and then Eggman, who's like, that's completely wrecked their plan, is the fact that the bat signal's covered, is like, well, what do we do now?
Yeah.
And then eventually when they bring in Batman and he's basically just dressed up as a lady. And then,
so good, just the wig, and then he's like, let's get nuts.
And they've got the Let's Get Nuts mix, which that song is written by Patrick Stump from Fall Out Boy.
Does the sickest backflips.
That's amazing.
Even better.
My favorite part of that whole song is the part where the original Batman theme, like the na 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 remix. And like that's a reoccurring joke too. Later on in the film, anytime he has to say no, instead he says nah, and then he ends up going na 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 na.
Yeah.
Him singing his own theme song, like they very quickly establish how conceited he is and how much he loves himself, which again is so important in this film because it's about him not relying on anyone else. And as a way of not doing that over the years, he's developed this lack of dependence by thinking he's the only one that anyone will ever need, the world will ever need.
Yeah. It's a really interesting sort of like portrayal of Batman because like we sort of go through, like a lot of the Nolan movies and, retrospectively looking how Matt Reeves presents and like introduces the Batman as like a hero that's not very well loved or appreciated or anything like that.
Even though it's assumed that all of the stuff that we've seen in the Batman universe has happened.
Yeah.
They mention the two boats from The Dark Knight and they also mention the parade with the Prince song.
Yeah, and he's like, no, don't talk about that. Yeah. That's fine. And it's just, and then like Alfred when he talks about like, oh, we had that time in 2008, and it goes through like all the years of 2016.
Yes,
and then that weird time in '66, and then it cuts to Bat Dance.
I love the moments where it cuts to live action footage instead. Everything has been reanimated, and then they just like pick 2 or 3 moments in the film, and they're like, no, this has to be live action.
It's so good. I was just reading some of the lyrics of like that song as well. It's just like, who is the manliest man? And Batman, and who never skips leg day? Batman, and then it's like, who always pays their taxes? Not Batman.
It's so good. I actually was really curious, having not seen the Lego movie. How do you like the action portrayed in Lego pieces?
Oh, it looks great.
It's incredible. I love flames when they're like the little flame pieces. I remembered finding that so funny when I watched the Lego movie as well.
Even like the little noises as well when like they're firing guns and going pew 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 pew.
Yeah, it's like us doing a lightsaber battle. Yeah. All of the language around the world they live in still relates to Lego as well. Like they talk about the city being built on plates that click together. It's very, very clever. So whether you're a Batman fan, whether you're a Lego fan, it is just so thick with references to all of the stuff that you love.
Yeah. And I think going into the first, I was going to talk about this, I forgot. So when I watched this film for the first time, so I watched this film totally basically by accident. I was supposed to go see the live action remake of Beauty and the Beast, which was out at the same time at the drive-ins. And
best accident ever.
Yeah, and so I was supposed to go to the film. However, I basically can't get out of my house without keys. Like, you can't just open the door and leave. So I couldn't find my keys at home, and it got to the point where it took me so long to find my keys that we missed the start of the movie. So then I'm like, okay, well, what's our other options? Like, I guess we can see the Lego Batman. That's fine. I didn't do any research about it. Like, I didn't know that it was like playing it straight or satirical or anything. And as soon as that opening credit sequence starts, like, oh, I'm really going to enjoy this.
Ooh, yeah.
Particularly because like it's just one of these movies that it's very smartly written, but there's enough there for people who have never seen a Batman movie before. Mm-hmm. There's people who have maybe dipped their toes in and watched the Nolan films or anything like that. But then there's so many little Easter eggs and references that someone who's like a really big Batman person, there's so many little things to clutch onto. Is like, that's genuinely hilarious. I always like it when a franchise can poke fun of itself, and they do it so well here.
They really do. And it's so easy to not get that balance right too. Yeah, I think they really nail it. But as you said, it kind of establishes this idea very early on that he doesn't need anyone else.
Yep.
And that simultaneously sets up his own internal conflict, but it also sets up the major conflict of the film with Joker feeling offended and wanting to do something bigger and badder to really get back at Batman.
Yep.
And so after the initial fight sequence, Batman celebrates with a victory trip to the orphanage where he's shooting off merchandise to all the kids.
And then he's beeping his horn to like, no, Batman,
So
which is
good.
great.
And we meet the character of Dick Grayson. Michael Cera is best on ground for me in this film. Or even like the physical comedy of the character of Dick Grayson. There isn't anything he does that I'm not in tears laughing at.
Yeah.
So funny.
And the visual as well of like Dick with like really sort of big eyes with the glasses. I think
Coke bottle glass
they talk
lenses.
about that at one stage when he's like rattling off all the like, he's like, would you adopt an orphan who has got this, and this? And he talks about, I think, like with having large eyes or whatever and stuff. So I think it's really funny. And they nailed the whole voice cast for this, particularly that for Michael Cera for Robin and particularly like a young Dick Grayson. Smashed it.
Very good. So he travels back home and we get a fun couple of moments here. We talked about when we were doing the podcast on Batman 89, how much I hate when the Batwing goes up and just it gives way to gravity and comes back down. They do that in Lego form on his way back to the Batcave.
It's like, yeah, we're going to show that everything in the Batcave has like a bat motif, basically.
They go through virtually every form of transport.
Yep.
Just put bat at the front of it, like the Bat kayak. What I love about this sequence is very quickly there is this stark contrast from the action-packed opening to how mundane his life at home is, his
Yep.
personal life. And it happens so quickly because he comes back into the Batcave. He says, Iron Man sucks, as his
That's
password.
a buzzword, yeah.
And everything's like mechanical and extreme and it's fast-paced. And then he gets in the elevator and the elevator goes really slowly. And that's the stark contrast into like him going into the kitchen. And we watch him accidentally enter 20 minutes instead of 2 minutes on the timer. He can't find the right HDMI cord on his TV. Like, I love how well they show just the monotony in comparison.
Doesn't want to talk to Alfred when he gets in there as well. So you go from, and particularly the big sort of celebration when he stops Joker and these criminals, you know, talking to everybody, fires off Prego as a line, which I love. And then they're like, oh, you know, must be, you know, like celebrating with all the really big party and going home, you know, like to hang out with all these women and stuff. And it's just nothing. And it's like the total isolation of Batman. And I think it sets it up really well. Like,
Yeah, it basically shows that his entire life is him being Batman, no Bruce Wayne aspects. And they really hammer that home by having him, even when he's wearing his robe, he's still wearing the cowl, the Batman mask.
And then when he goes to the benefit or when they're announcing the new commissioner, he's still got his cowl on with his tuxedo.
Yes.
Or not
Alfred
his
has to tell him to
not
take
not
it
his
off.
cowl. It's like his like mechanical like face costume or something, like I forget what the light is.
Alfred has to like dumb it down for him because he doesn't know what the cowl means.
Yeah, which is fantastic.
I do like that even though he has this kind of vibrato about him and this I don't need anyone, we do see moments of his loneliness, like when he's laughing watching Jerry Maguire and then he looks around to laugh with other people and no one's there. So you do get a sense of sadness in him.
Yep.
But yes, as you said, he does have to go off to Commissioner Gordon's retirement party. And even though the event is about Commissioner Gordon retiring, they just brush over him. He doesn't even get to speak. I think at one point he says like 2 lines, like thank you, and then gets cut off again.
Yeah.
And it's all about his daughter, Barbara. She's the new and improved, and she's got like a full song remix as she comes in.
Has like a 4-point plan for stopping crime, and immediately like Bruce is infatuated with her. And at the same time, this is when Bruce meets Dick Grayson, and that's probably my favorite
gag.
line in the whole movie when Robin introduces himself as like, oh, my name's Richard Grayson, like the kids at the home call me Dick, and then Bruce is like, oh, kids could be so cruel.
So good.
Very good line.
It is really, really good.
But the whole time sort of Dick's basically trying to like sell himself as someone that Bruce should adopt.
And
he's
Bruce accidentally does.
because he keeps
he's-
saying yes to everything because he's totally overwhelmed by Barbara.
Barbara, he's just like, they do like that classic thing where everything goes into slow motion.
I just died of your arms tonight.
Then we sort of kick into, after this is all sort of interrupted, and Barbara sort of, his big plan is basically like, hey, we're not relying on Batman, it takes a village. And again, sort of these themes about doing things together rather than by themselves. And then
He takes a drink.
Yeah, it's like,
just
sorry,
so he
can I
spit it
wait
out.
for this? Yeah, just to basically in disbelief, which is great. And then
He also, when he interrupts, he's like, quick question. I need to use quick question,
a very common way to
love
shorten
it.
question.
I love it. And obviously it's made 10 times better by Will Arnett's voice, but just quick question.
This gets broken up by the Joker coming
Yes.
in.
So the Joker has seen Superman on TV.
Yes.
Talking about the
Zod.
Fortress of Solitude and how he had to lock Zod and a bunch of other supervillains away there because
In the Phantom Zone, yeah.
yes. Sorry, I said Fortress of Solitude.
But the Phantom Zone projector
Is in the Fortress of Solitude. And he realizes, because he's got a pretty underwhelming Batman villain crew on his side, he realizes it would be a good idea for him to be able to break all of them out of the Phantom Zone so that they can support him and take down Batman once and for all.
Yep.
He comes to the party and you think there's going to be this big showdown, and they really build to it. Like, that's when Batman does his first master build, where he puts together this like massive kind of robot.
Yeah, it's called like the Scrapper or
The
something.
Scrapper, something like that.
Yep.
Yeah. It's awesome because, again, it highlights how like Barbara's trying to do her thing, but he just kind of overshadows her.
Yep.
And then as soon as he's about to take Joker down, he just gives himself up.
Yep. And they're like, well, something's off. But at the same time, they're kind of celebrating the fact that, okay, all the criminals are locked up. And then basically the scene finishes and it's like, well, crime's been solved.
Yeah.
Every single villain is now locked up. And it's like, wow, you must be really excited. And there's like this complete disbelief on Batman's face. And then it cuts to like going into black and white while there's like color and different things sort of happening around him. It's like, nah, I'm in black and white basically while this is happening. And
Playing one is the loneliest number.
yeah, and everyone's celebrating, and he's like, well, what am I supposed to do now? Because like they ask him as like, well, what are you going to do with the rest of your life now? And he has no idea.
Because he
that
doesn't
is
have
his
his life. Yeah. He's got so much pent up anger and he was like ready for a fight, but didn't get a chance to. He just punches Bane
Yeah.
unprovoked.
It's like, what are you doing? I'm fighting Bane.
That was unnecessary.
Perfect.
So no more crime. They're celebrating, but Bruce is paranoid that the Joker is up to something, which of course he is, but unfortunately it's Bruce's paranoia that ends up causing the plan. He's worried the Joker's going to break out, and so he wants to send him to the Phantom Zone where he can't break out. And the thing that causes him to think of the Phantom
the
Zone,
truck.
Phantom Zone dry cleaning.
So good. Which Harley Quinn is driving to like set that up basically.
It's brilliant. To do this, he has to break into Superman's Fortress of Solitude so he can get the Phantom Zone projector. To help him with this mission, he ends up enlisting Dick Grayson.
Who he didn't know he adopted.
Yeah, he only just realizes now. We get a few moments in a row, one with him like not wanting Dick Grayson around, but also like shutting down Alfred, like quite cruel to Alfred as well.
Yeah.
Listen, you don't have a family. You're satisfied serving me. So what do you know about having a surrogate son?
But Alfred lets him into the Batcave and he's completely taken in by all of the gadgets.
What? It's the Batcave! Oh my gosh. 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 Oh my gosh.
But especially all of the outfits, which he then gets to try on. They do a few montage try-ons of costumes and things like that. I really like the Baryshnikov one. Like, all of them are puns, obviously, but that one in particular, I was laughing out loud.
And they did one that's like, oh, that's like the mariachi outfit. And it's like, no, that's culturally
insensitive. But unfortunately, when Dick Grayson does put on the reggae outfit, the pants are a little too tight.
So then you get to take them off.
Tears them off.
And then we get the original.
Does he actually say strip? I feel like every time he pulls them off, he says something like strip or rip or...
I can't remember.
Because it happens a few times where he just has to like tear off his pants.
Yeah, and he gets down to the trunks.
Rip! It's better. Now I'm free. Now I'm moving. Come on, Batman. Let's get grooving.
But yeah, sort of things like move from there. And then I love the fact as well that like Batman establishes that him and Bruce Wayne are Robin's like two new dads.
Yeah.
And they're co-parenting, which yeah, ends up some really good stuff. And then like talking about seat belts after they drive off.
The physical comedy when they crash the car and then he's like puts his arm across him.
And then when Dick asks Batman about like what are the vigilante rules about cookies, and Batman's just like there are no rules. He's like holding all the cookies. Very good. So yeah, they end up at the Fortress of Solitude because Batman basically uses Dick because he's the only one who can get into a certain part of the fortress.
He says his superpower is listening to instructions.
Yeah.
And he asks him if he can be quiet, and Dick replies, "When I desire to be." So softly. It's just,
That's
it's
great.
so creepy, but I laugh every time I
It's a good
hear
one.
that.
You're super nimble, right?
I sure am.
And small.
Very.
And quiet.
When I desire to be.
So yeah, he brings Robin to go to the fortress, and then he's basically trying to distract the rest, Superman. But then he realizes again, sort of like further establishing this isolation that Batman's got, that the rest of the Justice League are having a party celebrating the anniversary of the Justice League without him, and it's like quite cutting.
It really is.
It's like, oh, this is a bit brutal, and they all kind of realize that as well. They kind of turn around and they're like, oh, my invite must have got lost or anything like that. And that's when you get these other the voice casts of Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum. Adam Devine also as the Flash, which is great.
Gets him to take the photo of the rest of the group.
Yeah, and he's thinking, oh, great, because we kind of established already that people like taking a photo with Batman earlier in the piece. There's a bit when Bruce is taking a selfie with Dick, and then at the last second puts his face over Dick's, which is great. But yeah, so he has to take a photo of the League without him, and he's like, oh, I need to find a way to slip away from this party unnoticed, and he does it ultra easily because they don't care.
No one
he's
cares.
there. So
I also really like that the bell to the Fortress of Solitude is just the Superman theme.
yeah.
Sup, Soups?
This is a nice sequence where they start to work together and he's giving him instructions via the radio, but also Robin's just naturally able to do all of this stuff. And he's like just chatting to him very casually during it. He wants to like come up with his own catchphrases and stuff.
He's trialing a few of them.
Tweet on the street.
The iconic Robin line.
Or the song.
Fly, Robin, fly.
Oh dear. But they do get the Phantom Zone projector, sorry. And then they have to try and break into Arkham Asylum to use it on the Joker.
Which goes so well.
The shimmering of Robin's cape as he's like trying to hide in the darkness.
Yeah.
Can you see me?
Yeah, and Batman's like, you need to blend into the darkest part of your costume, which Robin does so well with bright yellow, red, and green.
Yeah, exactly right. But they run into Barbara and she asks if Robin is his son. He says no. And then she goes, it's weirder if he's not your son. And I love, because there's this long running gag about the different versions of Robin and like what age is he and is Batman adopting this kid or is it just someone he's working with? It's very, very funny.
Yep.
But they do finally get in after having gone through all the metal detectors, and he takes out the dolphin from his utility belt, strips off his pants as well, and then they go running through the prison and finally get to the Joker, who, of course, wants to be transported to the Phantom
and eventually
Zone.
suckers Batman into basically doing that. And then this is where sort of, I don't know, the multiversal Lego elements start to come into things when, the Joker is in the Phantom Zone.
We get all the Warner Bros.
Yes, we do. And we get the fact that they describe Joker as a villain, but he's got like these moments of tenderness. That's what Phyllis says, played by Ellie Kemper.
Yes.
And talking about sort of being quite upset about the fact that Batman doesn't hate him. He's not the greatest villain, all these sort of things. And then eventually this is when we start to get in an absolute wealth of villain cameos.
They're all Warner Brothers properties, which Warner Brothers has tried this a few times to varying degrees of success.
I think this was better than in Space Jam 2.
I haven't seen Space Jam 2, but I've heard it's atrocious. But I love this one. So from Lord of the Rings, we've got Sauron, we've got agents from The Matrix, we've got Gremlins.
I missed that Matrix agents.
Oh, yeah?
No, okay, there you go.
We got Gremlins, we've got Voldemort, we've got Jurassic Park, Velociraptors, King Kong, Godzilla, The Wicked Witch, British robots, just Doctor Who references.
Yep,
It's
Medusa,
really, really good.
I think in there as well. Yeah, there's just so many of them. And it's
so
great.
many. But because they only come in for like a throwaway gag here or there, it doesn't feel too much.
No, it doesn't. It's not like super overstuffed. And then kind of when the Joker sort of gets them out of the Phantom Zone, it very quickly establishes like sort of who the big bosses are, I guess. He gives like an intro to Voldemort, to the Wicked Witch, to King Kong, and to Sauron. They're the only ones he kind of intros. Everyone else is kind of like cannon fodder to a degree.
Yep.
So I do really enjoy that.
I feel like it was an overly complicated plan for Joker to even have to go there. He should have just released them, like Harley Quinn does.
Oh, exactly. She hits the button and is like, okay, here you go.
Oh, well.
He needed to have a business meeting with them.
That's true. He needed to make sure they were all on the same page before he let them out. I do like the chaos of when they first arrive. They're running amok, but in their own ways. Like, there's spells from the Wicked Witch versus the magic that Voldemort's doing. But then there's also, like, King Kong climbing the buildings and Godzilla, like, in the water. Like, all the classic things that you've seen from their films working together in this chaotic sequence.
Works really well.
They realize very quickly that Bruce Wayne is Batman, and so they decide to make their new lair at his home. At this point, Batman is unable to protect the city because after sending the Joker to the Phantom Zone, he and Dick Grayson were locked up.
Yep.
But it isn't long before Barbara comes along and realizes she does in fact need him. He doesn't make the same realization about her for quite some time.
No, not really. He starts to do it. Then it gets to a stage where, no, he puts them in the scrapper robot and like tries to send them off as like, no, I need to do this. I need to beat the Joker like by myself.
Yeah, and it is an interesting sequence because for a while they are kind of working together. So it's a team of him, Barbara, Dick Grayson, and Alfred in the 60s Batman attire.
Very, very good.
And they are kind of working together well, but they're only kind of secondary to what he's doing. So like, he'd rather have the ship autopilot instead of Barbara flying it. All Alfred's doing is like sweeping bricks to him. Like, they're really, really minor roles. But then he sees after Dick Grayson falls and he goes to like, he dives off to save him, which by the way is hilarious too, because he's just falling and going, Dick. There's a couple of just Dick jokes throughout. Alfred calling him Master Dick the entire time. But yeah, this is like, has a selfless moment with that. But then Alfred falls and Barbara ends up saving him. And then he's like, oh, other people are helpful.
And then he's like thanking Batrope. For all of their like wows, like really came in handy. He's like talking it like the Batrope like it's a real thing, and then Pewter, which I should say is voiced by Siri, which is fantastic. Says like, no, actually, Miss Gordon saved Alfred.
Yeah.
And
for a second, did you think Alfred was going to die?
100%.
I was
getting like
whoa.
Toy Story 3 vibes. I was like, nope, they're going down. Like, this is how it ends. And I couldn't remember. I was just like, did they kill Alfred in this movie?
Yeah. It looked like it was going to happen. It was dark.
But they didn't. And good save and establishing. I was like, okay, we do need to work together to stop, these insurmountable odds.
And they do. And they get Godzilla to like breathe fire at Sauron. The moment when Godzilla has done that and he's like, oh, whoops, and he like whistles and walks away. Quick reference to Batman 89 here with Galifianakis saying something about wonderful toys.
Yes.
But yes, as you said, when it gets to the end of this battle and they take a photo and it's like the Bat family, it reminds Batman of his own family, of what's happened to his parents, and as a way to shield himself from any more loss, he sends them off and decides to face Joker on his own. Naturally still very upset that Batman hasn't admitted that Joker is his ultimate enemy. He sends him off to the Phantom Zone. And we get that section where Ali Kemper's character, what is it, Phyllis?
Phyllis, yep.
Shows him all of the bad things that he's done, even though she doesn't say he's a villain. She says he's not a good person either.
Yeah, he's not quite a hero either.
Yeah, and I do really like this, holding up the mirror to him and letting him see what he has done.
Yep.
Which, again, is another reference that keeps coming up, Man in the Mirror. Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror comes up 4 times throughout the film.
That start of the quote, and it's just like, no, I
Crosses
said it.
Out. I said it. He realizes he's been a bit of a jerk, and even though he was kind of doing it for their protection, he's also doing it to protect himself more than anyone else.
Which is like what Alfred says at the start of the film is like, that's your greatest weakness, is that you don't want it like a new family now.
Yes. So he begs Phyllis to let him go back so that he can help his new Bat family. And she agrees, but he has to round up all of the other villains and also return
himself.
Did you like the Dick Grayson putting on the Nightwing costume?
I mean, it's a different sort of Nightwing costume. But
for sure.
Nightwing's probably one of my favorite DC characters, so I was pretty happy they sort of chucked a little reference into that there.
But the whole time I'm watching this film, I'm like, Boylan's going to love that, he's going to love that, and that. If I'd just written a list of notes on what you like in the film, I would have had a Bible's worth of...
There's a lot of good Batman stuff here.
There really is. And a lot of good Lego stuff.
That's it.
I like that when he comes back to make amends to his bat family, and when he's apologizing, he makes the Babs signal, and like each of them have their own bat signal versions of their character,
Which is great.
and after neglecting them earlier on, all the traditional Batman villains, not the new ones from the Phantom Zone, but the original Batman villains,
He recruits them.
he does recruit them. And this is a great gag too, because when he originally doesn't want them, it's clearly a reference to the Suicide Squad and him being like, who would ever do that? That's a terrible idea.
It's like, why would you work with villains? It's a good little sort of jab at Task Force X.
That reference in particular, what's the timing between Suicide Squad and The Suicide Squad and then this film?
Ooh, good question.
Because I feel like that joke works even better if only the first film has come out, since it received a pretty negative
definitely,
reception.
yeah. The second one hadn't come out. That was 2021. The original film, the David Ayer one, that was 2016. So the year before this movie came out.
Okay, great. That reference works even better.
Yes.
But he lets them in and they're all really willing to work with him because they've been neglected by the Joker for the superior villains.
Exactly. So
Which is great because we get a bit more Billy D.
You can call me Billy D.
Yes, Lando. Yes.
we do get a bit more Billy D, which is fantastic. And again, there's sort of this discussion about animated films sometimes, and I think it's a really lazy discussion from people who are always like, oh, it's, immature and doesn't deal with serious concepts or anything like that. It's very clear thematically what this film's trying to do, and it's not... I mean, there's some stuff it can be a little bit heavy-handed with, but it's like, if you're watching the film and you understand sort of what's being talked about and introduced at different stages of the film, it's very clear, like, it's a really well-written and smart film. So this film is always an example I show to people when they say, like, oh, animated movies are stupid and have no substance. It's like, go watch this. It's... although it presents as like a really light superhero comedy film, it's...
I mean, Poquero las dos. You can have a stupid film that has substance.
Exactly
like,
right.
this is stupid, but it's great.
It's good stupid.
Exactly
It's
right.
Stupid.
Smart stupid. Yeah. So they all team up. Barbara finally becomes Batgirl, puts on probably another montage there, is it? Of her trying different costumes?
They're trying and then they try different names out.
Yes.
And then it's like, oh, if I'm Batgirl, does that make you Batboy? And then just swiftly move on.
But we get some great moments in this battle where it all comes together. When Alfred's fighting and he says, "You've been Union Jacked." Classic Batman things like onomatopoeia text.
Together we're gonna punch these guys so hard, words describing the impact are gonna spontaneously materialize out of thin air.
There was a shark in this moment, and I wondered, is that supposed to be Jaws?
It is, yeah.
That's fantastic.
And then finally the shark repellent bat spray comes in handy.
Oh my gosh. So I always reference the 60s Batman where they're hanging onto that ladder from the helicopter trying to use the shark repellent. That's a reason to watch the movie. Like, that gag alone is how I sell that movie to people.
Yep.
It's so ridiculous, but it's incredible because of that.
Exactly.
I'm glad that the shark repellent got not one, but two mentions throughout the film and finally got to work.
Exactly. And the fact that Jaws at like one stage, I think, is like piloting a submarine as well, wearing like a captain's hat. I'm like, so good.
So they send all the bad guys back, but it's too late. All the bombs have gone off in the city and the whole world starts to just split in two. So the Joker and Batman connect on an emotional level and then connect on a physical level when they join so that the town can be pulled back together.
Using the power of their abs.
It's so good because everyone in the town has to contribute to do it. Batman letting other people help, letting other people in. But I just love that moment too when they have all stepped on each other's heads and then reached out to other people. And the part where it just snaps together and they all just click up next to each other.
That's what happens when you put Lego together.
Yeah, exactly right. It then puts Batman and Joker in a physical proximity that really works towards like the fake romantic storyline between them as well.
Like right up
the
there.
Sexual tension between them. It ends with Batman having to then, or thinks he has to go back to the Phantom Zone as well and doing his dramatic goodbyes to everyone. But then, of course, Phyllis turns up and says that he doesn't need to do that. We get this sense of joy amongst the family as they can finally become a Bat family.
Yep.
The joy in Alfred's face as his little bald wig wiggles.
Little toupee.
I think it's a really nice moment at the end of the film, repeating all of those mundane routine things that he was doing.
But now doing them together.
Very, very good.
Watching Jerry Maguire, 4 plates of lobster thermidor on
In
top
the
of each
microwave.
other. Yeah. And then also, I think a callback to like the villain that like Alfred's talking about was like snake clowns or whatever it is.
Oh, yes.
The thing that you're scared of, like snakes, clowns.
Snake clowns.
It's like, how dare you put that idea in my head?
And then for the rest of the film, that is his biggest fear.
Snake clowns.
Look, I had a ball with this, and I had seen it once before, but didn't remember enjoying it as much as I did on this viewing.
Oh yeah, it's definitely one of these films that you can watch multiple times. You're gonna appreciate and pick up different lines of dialogue here and there. So I definitely think it's a film that warrants repeat viewing. Whether you came to Film Club on last week and that was your first time with the movie, like watch it again.
Or whether you're Zoe and you've seen it 100 times over.
And watch it 101 times.
Exactly. And thank you once again, Zoe, for recommending it and consistently recommending it. Relentless with those suggestions.
It has been forefront of the mind.
We had a ball with it, and we were only disappointed that you weren't there to enjoy it with everyone else. But I have since run into Zoe, and she said she's going to make sure she watches it at home and potentially listen to the podcast afterwards. That's who it's for.
Exactly. Doing it for the people.
Shall we move on to weekly watches?
Let's do it.
Weekly watches. Weekly watches.
Bit of a different weekly watches for me. I don't have any movies, but I'm actually going to kick things off with an old favorite of mine, a TV show that I'm watching at the moment. I have probably mentioned it numerous times on the podcast, but I wanted to chat with you about it specifically because I'm not sure if you watch it. Taskmaster?
No.
So it is like a British competition panel show where each season they get 5 different comedians on, and over, say, a 6-month period, they have pre-shot challenges with those comedians. And then they bring them in studio and they talk about those challenges and then show the clips of it. And they get to see how each of them is stacked up.
It's got an Australian version?
It does.
New Zealand version?
New Zealand, a Swedish version, an American version, which did not last long at all.
Doesn't surprise.
So it's obviously become really, really popular.
It's a thing. Okay.
Created by Alex Horne, another British comedian who... One year, I think it was Tim Key, a friend of his and comedian/poet, ended up winning this award. And Alex was like, well, I'm just going to make my own TV show and present that in the festival and get my own award. And he ended up doing it as like a gag, and it became super popular.
Oh, wow.
And so
Okay.
it spawned, like, I think they're up to season 14 or 15 now.
Okay.
But
I didn't realize it had been going for such a long time.
Oh, well, because they film 2 seasons a year, because it takes about 6 months to do the challenges, and then they just jump straight into the new season.
Gotcha.
But it is such a comfort show for me. Like, it's the kind of thing where if I need to do something in the background, I will always just be like, back to season 1 of Taskmaster.
Cool.
Highly encourage to watch. It's on Binge. I think it's starting to become a lot more mainstream now that it's on accessible streaming services. But when I originally stumbled upon it, it was when I was in New Zealand and it was on TV
Right,
there.
okay.
And then I ended up finding like old copies of it somewhere.
Went down the rabbit hole.
Exactly right. But I
Yep.
think because they've done an Australian version now, all the British ones are now up on Australian streaming too.
Fantastic.
So yeah, I highly recommend it. It's good fun.
I'll have to give it a crack. All of my weekly watches are movies this week.
Well, it's good contrast.
Yeah, I watched a lot of movies.
The first one on your list, you've already spoken about on it.
Did I?
Oh, you know what it is.
Because you commented on my letterbox review.
Yes, I did.
You did, and we can talk about that. That's fine.
Whoops.
But the film I am talking about for the first time on a podcast in history.
What an intro.
is called It Follows. So it came out in 2014, directed by David Robin Mitchell. There's sort of this curse situation where basically it's passed on when 2 characters have sex, and then basically the person it's been passed on to is then followed by something.
Riding the coattails of the elevated horror craze,
Very much so.
going a little more on the nose with the sexually transmitted diseases.
A little bit.
Yeah.
It's heavy-handed in that way. I think probably like why I enjoyed this film, I thought how it's shot is very creative. There's lots of wide shots in this film, and you've kind of basically just got to be keeping an eye out for a character who might be moving towards our protagonist.
It is very
I
cool.
think that, and there's some of the shots I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. Like, and you kind of don't see it coming. I think it's got a really good sound design as a film. I really like the score that's been done by Rich Vreeland, who's had been doing like video game scores and some quite sort of synthy stuff there. But the whole film feels very tense.
100%. And I think one of the major strengths of it is that depending on whether you are seeing things through the point of view of the characters that are being stalked or not, they are either invisible to you or you can see them, but they're invisible to other characters. So they do flip that perspective around so that you as an audience get to feel the film from different characters' perspectives, and I think that is a major strength of it.
Yeah. So I know, again, sort of one of these films that I know got talked about a lot is, a really popular horror movie from the 2010s. And I was glad I got around to watching it. I thought it was really fantastic. It was a good watch.
Can I just clarify that my comment on Letterboxd, so I don't dislike this movie.
No, I know.
But I feel like we've set it up as if I absolutely hate it. All I said on Letterboxd, you had said that it...
One of the best horror films of the decade.
Of the decade, yes. And I said... Look, I'm with you if you were to say maybe the best horror film of 2014, but of the whole decade, it was a strong decade.
It was a strong decade.
And it has some fierce competition. So I'm not sure that it quite cuts the mustard for the whole decade.
That's fair.
But each to their own, you know?
Guess it depends of like one of the best, like what number does that cast?
Yeah, maybe you would say one of the many bests.
Yeah, like one of the best like 20 films, 25 horror films to come out of that decade, which is, I mean, that's a lot of horror movies.
That's true. And look, I will say I was pretty quick onto the old keys when I saw that. I didn't do a whole lot of research.
I think the review was up for about 5 minutes and you've gone up. That's...
it was more the phrasing just popped into my head of how I wanted to...
that's fair.
To keyboard warrior.
And Warriors you did.
Next up for me is a podcast.
Whoa.
So I'm doing all different media forms.
Off the rails today.
I would have done more movies, except the movies I've been watching this week have been Star Wars films because I wanted to compare how we rank them to if I did a rewatch, would I still feel the same way? And there has been some shuffling, but I don't want to talk more Star Wars because that was all the podcast was last week. So
we can talk to Sharky about it.
Exactly right.
Hey, it's Sharky again. I love Star Wars.
Yeah, you do. For the podcast, I've got The Lonely Island and Seth Meyers podcast. Have you heard of this?
Yes.
I don't know why I asked you while you were walking away. Mr. Boylan is very graciously turning on the light for me because we're currently just sitting in a room by the dim light of computer screen. We need our lightsabers to wave. Where were those sounds when I was pew-pewing last week? You didn't want to belittle my attempts. Anyway, The Lonely Island and Seth Meyers podcast is a new one for me, so regular listeners will note that I've got my fave podcasts and I don't tend to venture out of them all that often. I love the Weekly Planet Boys. I love listening to the Hamish and Andy podcast.
Okay.
I don't take on too many serious podcasts. I'm not doing my true crime podcasts or anything like that. But this one has been a new and very, very fun listen. So all three of the Lonely Island boys and Seth Meyers essentially just chatting about their time in the early stages of when they were recruited for SNL.
Okay.
So each episode is them talking about a different comedy short. So what I didn't realize was the comedy shorts were kind of their invention because they were making comedy videos and stuff. When they did audition for SNL, originally they were doing the sketches, but then some of their old clips kind of surfaced online and they realized, hang on, this is like their niche. They should be doing these pre-recorded
those YouTube
sketches.
shorts, yeah.
It's essentially about how that all came to be and how they were finding their feet with it. A lot of the early sketches they did, they were out of material, so a lot of other people wrote them and then they just filmed them.
Okay.
But yeah, we're talking things like Natalie's Rap, Lazy Sunday, one that I hadn't seen in forever. It's like a song about Chuck Norris.
I don't even think I've seen that one before.
It's not just listening to these episodes about the SNL episodes, but also it has spawned me going back and rewatching a bunch of those shorts.
Cool.
If you're an SNL fan or even just a fan of this group of guys, It's a really, really interesting listen.
Okay.
And they get some cameo audio from like Bill Hader and some of the other greats from SNL. So
Perfect.
yeah, it's good fun.
Fantastic. I'll have to add that. I'm not the biggest podcast guy, but there might be one I think I add to the rotation. A film I want to talk about next is a film that you definitely like. So I'm expecting some activity and praise for this film, and it's Memento. One of Christopher Nolan's earliest work. Came out in 2000.
While you were looking up the details, you should have said uno momento.
Uno momento, por favor. Obviously stars Guy Pearce, and it's a bit of a neo-noir film. However, with a very sort of unique concept. The main character's got no short-term memory. So basically the film's almost going in a little bit of reverse.
Yep.
And he's having to, basically every time he falls asleep, he loses his memory. So you get one part to the film takes place in color going back one way, and then you're getting these other sequences going the other direction, filmed in black and white.
It's such a classic Nolan move, isn't it? He's become synonymous with time manipulation stuff.
This sets the tone, really. It's a very sort of unique concept, but it's variations on a familiar theme, basically, because there's a lot of, really good sort of neo-noir tropes and staples of the genre that are in this film. They've just got a lovely little Nolan twist, and this is a film that had been on my docket for a really long time. Although I did my least favorite thing to do, which is watch a film over a couple of days.
Which is ideal for this kind of a film too.
Yeah.
It certainly doesn't rely on the consistency of all of the time jumps.
No, and I've been like, okay, where are we at now?
We're going forwards or backwards? What's happening?
What year is it?
But it was brand new.
Exactly. Highly praised for good reason. There's really good performances in this film. Really well shot film. I really like the tone, really like the score of it. Just had a good time. So
Nice.
Worth watching.
Last for me is a stage show. I've done it all this week. So I went and saw Wicked, which I hadn't seen before. I recognized more songs in it than I thought I did just from like hearing the soundtrack around. My sister loved it when she saw it, and so she was like, "It's back. We're all going." The whole family went, and I adored it. It was great. Some obvious standout moments were Defying Gravity, the song that everyone knows. Is like, it gives you chills. But my favorite part about Glinda is because she's a popular type character and she's a little bit stuck up, you could quite easily play that role and be very annoying.
Yep.
But she wasn't. She was super likable, super funny. And the song Popular that she sings was, you got to just separate Defying Gravity. Without that moment, this one would have been my favorite for sure. Like, she really, really sells it and has all these like fun little moments and movements that fit in time with the beat of the song. And
in Popular.
Yes. But what it's also, and this is going to be a little bit of a bridging to Tantalising Trailers, what it also made me think about, because they're making the Wicked movie. I think we've spoken about it on the podcast before.
We have.
And we weren't like super thrilled, but I also didn't have any sort of appreciation for the stage show then because I didn't know the music or anything. So I'm curious to revisit that trailer, but something that came out this week was a featurette called A Passion Project.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. It did pop up on my YouTube, but
pretty powerful featurette showing footage of both of the two leads being cast in the roles and like them getting so emotional and how much the role means to them. And that does give me a little more faith in the film, knowing what an incredible opportunity it is for them and knowing how much those characters mean to them. It makes me think that they'll really do the roles justice. It's just I'm not sure how well it will translate to screen, but it certainly made me more curious than I was.
Okay, it's good to know. I need to watch that little featurette. I've still got a couple more. One of the more sort of recently released films that I did watch was Next Goal Wins. Taika Waititi's film that came out last year.
Yep. He's churning them out at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah. I didn't get around to going to see this film, unfortunately, because it seemed like it would have at least been a bit more of a return to what I think Taika does well, in just doing something that's a little bit smaller.
Like an indie project.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm a sucker for a really good underdog sports movie. I guess like the dialogue around him and his movie sort of like after Thor Ragnarok has been like not the most positive. Sorry, not Thor Ragnarok, Thor Love and Thunder, I should say.
He lost his charm a little in that film.
I think so. And I think there's some of that charm that comes back in this film. Michael Fassbender plays a sort of disgraced American football coach, coaching the American team, but he's from Europe. He's Swedish. Thomas Rongen is the character's name. And basically he gets fired from his latest job in America and is sent to take a job that no one wants, which is coaching American Samoa. And he goes there to basically try to right the ship and sort of learn more about himself, but then also help the team as well. And there's humor that Taika uses in this film that, suits the characters of that region. Whether it's a Polynesian sense of humor or just Taika's sort of brand of humor can be very sort of tongue-in-cheek, I guess, with a lot of delivery.
Right.
A lot of that is in this film.
Yeah, okay.
With some really good performances, which, it's fantastic. And, Fassbender's really good in it, loosely based on a true story. This is sort of, something that did happen, and they sort of have a bit at the end where actually the real-life coach is in it, and you can sort of see the reactions of him. It's a story that everyone, I think, should be sort of interested in, learning about. The fact that it's presented in a really, fun comedy sports film is really good. So Taika's working his way back into my good books, so to speak.
Yeah, nice.
So, yeah. The last couple I'll run through reasonably quickly. So I watched They Live by John Carpenter. So from 88, starring WWF wrestler Rowdy Roddy Piper, who is known
Do you
as...
like wrestling?
Yeah, never mentioned that before on the podcast. Insert my own soundbite about wrestling.
Oh, man, that's going to take some finding.
But I guess to give you a little bit of information that Roddy Piper is probably arguably one of the best talkers in wrestling history, very known for being on the microphone. He's had a couple of different acting roles. I didn't sort of go into his acting work outside of the squared circle, but he's really good in this film, playing basically a no-name sort of drifter, and works on a job site. There's a conspiracy, there's something going on, and he ends up getting a pair of sunglasses that basically show that there's all this messaging going around the city, kind of like Orwellian sort of, trying to get people to do different things and controlling dystopian sort of vibes.
Gotcha.
And then works out that basically a lot of people who are in power and just regular people are aliens.
Yeah.
So it cuts from color, and then he puts the sunglasses on, it's in black and white, and it shows these creatures. He tries to be part of the resistance, working alongside Keith David, who was very weird to see Keith David not be an old man. The best part of the film, I think, Roddy Piper's trying to convince Keith David that he needs to put on these glasses and see what's going on in the world. And he doesn't want to do it. So they just have a massive punch on about it in an alleyway that goes for a really long time. And it's quite brutal, and it looks like it's over. But then Roddy Piper basically is nah, I'm putting these glasses on you whether you like or not. So they have another punch on basically. And it goes on forever. And eventually they's oh, okay. I believe you now. I can see the aliens. I can see the creatures.
Why is he resisting putting the glasses on so hard?
Because basically he wants to sort of keep his job, and he's got a good construction job. He doesn't want any part of whatever.
Oh, so he's you're probably right.
You kind of see a bit
I
of
don't
element.
want to
Yeah.
acknowledge that, because then I have to do something about it.
Essentially, yeah. It's I've got a pretty cushy setup. I'm going to basically bare knuckle brawl you in an alleyway.
That's
fine.
the best.
So,
I
yeah.
love that.
So there's a lot of, it's very sort of schlocky sort of action, and
Brilliant. I really want to see it.
very quickly cuts from he's got a pistol and stuff, and then he's managed to get a shotgun and all these other, and he walks into a bank and he can see all the creatures are in there, and he's I'm here to kick ass and shoot bubblegum, and I'm all out of bubblegum, and then just proceeds to blast everyone, and it's great. So they're very
Such a good
iconic.
line.
So yeah, They Live, very, very fun. And then my last one on weekly watches is a sequel to one of the most iconic sci-fi films of all time, and that's Blade Runner 2049. So 2017, took a while for me to get around to watching. It is quite long, so designate some time to watch this. Gorgeous looking film. It just, there's some of the shots in there I was whoa, this really good. So regardless, I don't know how you feel about Dune as a narrative thing. It looks pretty good.
Yeah, look, I have seen the first Blade Runner a couple times. I've started watching 2049 and I haven't finished it. And there was nothing wrong with the movie. I feel like it got interrupted and then it just fell off my radar.
That's
so
fair.
I would happily watch this because it does look beautiful. I've never been super engrossed in the Blade Runner story.
Neither, yeah.
The first one in particular, because I was such a Harrison Ford fan, I was like, yes, we're going to get a Star Wars. We're going to get an Indiana Jones. But it's slow. It's really slow. But you would think because I'm such a noir fan that these would kind of resonate with me a bit more. But I think they're just a bit bit slow for my liking.
That's fair.
I have
is a
heard
bit
this one is faster, yeah.
It is definitely, like, there's elements of, like, because Ryan Gosling's character is a Blade Runner, so there's still very much that detective element, lots of callbacks and links to the previous film, so if you're, a big fan of the first film, you're going to enjoy that sort of thing, but they're like really good performances right throughout the film. I like Jared Leto as the antagonist, who's really good. Anya de Armas is really fantastic as sort of Ryan Gosling's AI cyber girlfriend. She's really good in the film. And Harrison Ford is having a really good time, I think, stepping back into this role as Deckard. So, but there's some really great things when they go to Vegas, which is where Deckard is. Out in the desert, there's some shots there that are just like jaw on the floor, like it just looked really fantastic, and a really good score from Hans Zimmer as well. I highly enjoyed.
Awesome, I'll have to get to watching. Shall we move on to Tantalising Trailers?
Let's do it.
Trailers. Tantalizing films. Trailers. Don't know if we will be a fan. How will it be? We'll know in time.
3 for me. Originally, we were talking this morning about a lot of full-length trailers that have come out for things that we've previously discussed.
Yes.
I ended up scrapping those from my list. I don't know if you've still got a few of those on yours.
I had one, but I don't really need to talk about it.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm keen for Twisters.
Well, I can see the first one on your list, and it's the same as mine.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk Mother Couch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This trailer looked wild.
It looks awesome.
Yeah.
It looks really good. So, Ewan McGregor, is it Alan Burstyn? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, from The Exorcist.
Yes. She is just doing an incredible job in this. So, it is a comedy drama based on a Swedish book named Mama.
Okay.
It is really hard to gauge what's going on, but it's still super engrossing, if that makes sense. So in the trailer, we see a mother sitting in, we don't know what the establishment is. Is it a furniture store?
Yeah, it's like is it an abandoned furniture store? Are they a store? Is it like a cult?
Yeah, it's all up in the air. But essentially, her 3 kids come in to try and get her to leave this place.
Yep.
She's just gone in and she's being stubborn and won't move. And when they say that they're going to carry her out of there, she's like, yeah, I'd like to see you try. As soon as you do try, you
Throw
will end
myself
up...
down the stairs.
Yeah, it's intense, but it looks so good.
I really struggled. Like, initially I thought it was going to be like a dark comedy, the way the trailer sets up. But as the trailer keeps going, I'm like, are we getting sort of into like horror, maybe thriller kind of vibes?
That's what
like
I kind of got a feel for as well, but it's just listed as comedy drama.
Okay.
But the way that the credits are like, it's gripping. You won't want to leave your seat. Like, yeah, it does look like there's a lot of suspense in it as well.
Yeah, so like it was hard to get a read on the film, but I saw enough in there that I'm like, I want to go watch this.
I'm keen. I don't know who the actress is that seems to be working at the store as well, but I know she was, I think the character's name was Zoe from, do you ever watch the Escape Room franchise?
Yes.
Taylor Russell? Is that her?
It is Taylor Russell.
Taylor Russell,
You are
yes.
correct. She's really good in those.
She is really good in those. And like, I really like those films. They're kind of like PG Saw, even though they're not PG, but it's like...
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Saw light.
Saw light, yes. I'm going to digress just a little.
Go for it.
The second film, Tournament of Champions from Escape Room, had obviously a cinema release. But I don't know if you know this. There's a complete alternate cut of the film. And I think that's the version of the film that's on streaming.
Oh.
And it's so much better.
Really?
Did you see it at the movies?
No.
Okay, so I'm
Absolutely
curious.
not.
I'm curious. The red-headed character from the first film,
Yep.
was she in the version of the film that you saw?
Jeez, that's a good question. I haven't watched this. I think I might have watched this last year or the year before.
You'd remember because she's basically the one behind it all. Completely
No,
devaluing.
correct. Right at the end.
Yeah, completely devaluing
So
her death scene from the first one, and it's all complicated and weird.
No, I do remember that. And I do remember it's like, oh yeah, I didn't love this film because the landing did not stick at all.
Correct. But the alternate cut is so much better. And it's not just an alternate ending. The film itself has a completely new narrative laced in between it, like flashback sequences, a new bad guy. So the major aspects, like the traps and stuff of the film, are still all the same sequences.
Cool.
But there is another B storyline that is threaded through it that is so good.
Right.
It's incredible. So it's nothing to do with Tantalising Trailers, but just because it came up and we haven't had an opportunity to chat about this yet, I had to tell you. Whether I'll leave it in the podcast or not is a different matter.
We'll see how we go.
But yeah, you got to check it out because I found it so interesting. And the disappointing thing is if they ever make a third film, they're going to make it a sequel to the cinematic release instead of this alternate cut, even though the general consensus is this one is so much better.
So are we going to get a third escape room film?
I think they were talking about it
Really?
for a few years after the second one came out, but I think it's probably dead by now.
I feel like the escape room trend has started to die down a
Not
little
for me,
bit.
buddy.
I still really, really enjoy them, but in terms of like, I guess, being prominent in the cultural zeitgeist.
Oh, I knew what you meant.
I'm not having a go at you for you're enjoying escape rooms. Don't worry. I still absolutely adore them.
Good.
What I also adored is a really good segue.
We're back.
Is this trailer for a film called Thelma?
Spin-off to Thelma and Louise.
Obviously. The main character, Thelma, is played by June Squibb. She's an elderly lady herself, and she plays a grandma. If you know her from things like, I'm looking at the acting credits.
Classics like
Hoobie Halloween, which I actually don't mind that film.
I do.
That's okay. The Humans. Would You Rather?
Oh, have you seen Would You Rather? We can't digress on all of our films, but that is a horror film that it's essentially the game Would You Rather. Some people get invited to a dinner party and they get presented with real life Would You Rather scenarios and they have to choose what they want to do.
Oh, I mean, and she's also in the iconic film Meet Joe Black and Welcome to Mooseport. So
yikes.
Basically the film's about how this grandma gets conned that she has to give 10 grand to her grandson who's in jail. And it turns out it's a con artist. So basically she's like, well, I'm getting my money back. And it's about her going on a road trip on her motorized scooter trying to get her money back.
Does it end with her driving her motorized scooter off a ravine?
No.
Yeah.
Who knows?
For sure.
But I don't know. It sort of it paints it's almost like a revenge flick. But there's something about seeing June Squibb as a 94-year-old lady basically manning this revenge flick.
I love it.
It just looks like a really fun time. So I'm very down with that.
Nice. The next one that I want to talk about, and I'm a little bit late. This was on my list for a Tantalising trailer about a month ago.
Oh.
And for some reason, I just forgot to talk about it. Okay. Or maybe I didn't, and I'm going to be repeating myself. So let me know if this sounds familiar. It's called Wake Up.
No.
No?
Continue.
So a group of teenager or maybe early 20 activists break into a department store and they're wearing animal masks and they end up trashing it or spending the night in there after everything closes down. And when they're in there, a couple of security guards that are on duty come out to confront them and they end up accidentally killing one of the security guards.
Okay.
And the other one is a psychopath. So something happens after his friend ends up accidentally dying and then he flips out and wants to kill all the kids.
Okay.
Yeah, right? I knew this would be something that would be up your alley.
Absolutely.
I'm noticing as you're looking this up that we got a 2022, a 2023.
Yeah.
So if you go to that video up the top, it's that one there.
This one here.
Yeah.
From Studio Canal.
Yeah, so...
this looks good.
I don't know if it looks a bit schlocky, but
it looks like I'm having a good time.
Classic slasher kind of vibes.
That's up my alley.
Yeah, something that would be in your Studio Canal.
Nice.
But I really wanted to make sure that it was on your radar.
Yeah, I'll definitely be keen to check that one out. My last one is also in the horror vein. The conclusion of a trilogy that I've highly, highly, highly enjoyed. We've got Maxxxine. So Ty West's conclusion to the X-Pearl franchise, I believe.
I still haven't seen Pearl, but I love X.
Pearl's, I only saw Pearl late last year, or maybe even early this year. I'm not sure if I added it to my letterbox, but I really adore both of those films. I think they're absolutely brilliant. And this is basically the continuation of that franchise. So we've gone from X being set in the 70s Pearl is a prequel.
Yep.
Where you get a younger version of Mia Goth's character. So Mia Goth plays both Maxxxine, who's like the main character who we're getting in this film, but she also plays Pearl, like in makeup in X.
That was the one thing that when watching X, I was a little distracted by. Like, I get why she does it because like she sees herself in the character, but I always find those kind of prosthetics really distracting. Like, I've spoken to people about this before and they're like, oh, I didn't really notice or pay much attention to it.
Yep.
But whenever I see that, it really stands out to me. I noticed it too in the new Suspiria.
Haven't watched it because I love the original too much.
With Tilda Swinton in it, playing multiple roles, but one of those roles is a male character. And again, there's like no real reason. I think symbolically it's supposed to represent the fact that this whole society is dominated by women.
Yep.
But they don't really explain it. And so the whole time I'm like, why is Tilda Swinton dressed like this? Like, is there going to be some big reveal? And it doesn't feel like it ever pays off, so it's just distracting.
Right, okay.
And so I felt a little bit like that during X, but I also adored X. But I liked the other cast members, I think, more than I liked Mia Goth. So that's probably why I didn't rush out to see Pearl.
That's fair. I think that she's not the biggest part sometimes of X, but she is definitely like her performance. I think in Pearl is fantastic. There's a couple like monologues that you get, which is really good. You also get David Corenswet in that film, who is the new Superman. So if you want to get an understanding of what he's going to be like as Superman, he plays a projectionist in that film. But yeah, so we get the transition to now sort of this 80s set film called Maxxxine. Mia Goth's character, Maxxxine, basically trying to set herself up as an actress.
And it's post the events of X?
Correct.
So she's been through all the trauma of it all.
She's been through it.
Yeah.
And she's about to go through some more traumatic circumstances because she's trying to set herself up, and she's talking about basically transitioning, I think, from being an adult actress and then moving into horror. All the while this is going on, we've got the very real life circumstances of being in LA in the 80s, that the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, the serial killer, is basically time period where he's, killing, a lot of people.
Are you an American Horror Story fan?
No, I haven't really seen too much of it.
Again, the series that's right up your alley, but there is a slasher camp one set in the 80s, and the Night Stalker features in that as well. They love just taking fictional worlds and just slotting this real life killer into them.
Yeah, because you get very similar sort of like in Criminal Minds, like a lot of those characters in that show are inspired by real life serial killers, and he's one that sort of gets like a lot of references. I think particularly with when Tim Curry's in that show, who's legitimately terrifying.
I adore Tim Curry so much.
Worth a watch just for those episodes alone. Yeah, so the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, exists in this world. So basically you've got Mia Goth trying to set herself up as an actress, but also potentially avoiding Kevin Bacon, who is the detective.
Oh my goodness.
Who I think maybe knows sort of what's gone on in her past.
Well, he had a pretty traumatic past too. There was that town he lived in where dancing was outlawed.
Still recovering.
Yeah.
He's just got out of the town. But cast-wise, absolutely stacked. You've got, like I said, Kevin Bacon, Bobby Cannavale, Lily Collins, Halsey, Elizabeth Debicki, and Giancarlo Esposito as well.
Ooh, good cast.
So I really like one of my favorite things with the first two films in Ty West's trilogy, I guess, is both those films feel and look very different. It's very much like 70s sort of slasher vibes in X, and then you go to Pearl, which has got like a really sort of like old-timey Oklahoma sort of like bright Technicolor sort of vibe about it.
That's cool.
And very like stylized. And then you've got this, and in the trailer, I've watched this trailer maybe 4 or 5 times because I really enjoy it. It feels like, because the 80s are probably, one of my favorite decades for film. And I really love how this film feels so 80s in terms of excess, costuming, dark and like neon and like brightly sort of lit and glossy it is. It looks fantastic as a film. Arguably the film I'm most excited to see this year.
Yeah, right.
Like up there was probably like, Deadpool and Wolverine and a couple of other movies I'm keen to watch. But this is probably the one I really want to go see. I think it's also like very highly anticipated on Letterboxd. I think it might be like in the top 3 films that like people are keen to go see. So keen to see how this franchise is. I think this is the last one, like I said, finishes out. But yeah, I'm really keen for Maxxxine. It looks awesome.
Yeah, nice. Maybe we'll wrap it there. I had another one on the list, but I just don't feel enthused. And we had that
okay.
whole conversation about the trailers being tantalizing.
Does it tantalise?
And it doesn't. It truly doesn't.
Okay.
As always, remind audiences to subscribe, comment, share it around via email, text, fax, carrier pigeon, whatever your method of sharing might be.
Yep.
It was nice to have a lighter pod this week, a little bit shorter. It's going to be an audio-only podcast, but I will still chuck in that one clip of us waving lightsabers in defeat as the lights go out on us. But for now, we will retire into the shadows like creatures of the night. Thanks, everyone, and catch you in the next film club.
See you later.